everyone, and welcome. I am Betancourt. I'm a senior researcher at Christian Michelsen Institute in Norway, and I'm also a research director on the Thrive program. So essentially, Thrive is a multi-country research program that is entirely focused on scaling early childhood development programs and services in low and middle income countries. And it is funded by FCDO, which is UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and it is co-funded by MFAT, which is New Zealand's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So thank you very much for joining us for the very first session of the new Thriving Conversation webinar series, which we're very excited to launch today, especially given that today is also, it happens to be World Children's Day. So the rationale behind this new monthly Thriving Conversation webinar series is that, as you've heard already in the video just now, despite decades of important research on early childhood development, we still face major gaps in our understanding of how to take successful interventions from small pilots to sustainable national programs while maintaining quality along the way. And one of the most powerful ways to bridge these gaps is by strengthening dialogue. So essentially making sure that researchers and policymakers, that they talk to one another, that they learn from each other, and ultimately to make sure that researchers are asking the right questions and that policy decisions are grounded in evidence about what works at scale. And this new Thriving Conversation webinar series aims to support exactly those dialogues. So each month in each Thriving Conversation webinar, we will look at ECD programs that are at different points along the pathway to scale that you can see here on the diagram. So it starts from identifying key bottlenecks in child development to designing an innovation and doing initial feasibility testing at small scale, to testing at larger scale, and that's where we often use randomized controlled trials, to full integration into government systems, and then finally to evaluating program performance and at nationwide scale. And each time, so in each monthly Thriving Conversation webinar, we will invite a researcher and a policymaker or a practitioner to discuss the lessons learned and the challenges faced as programs move along this scaling journey. And today, to launch this series, we are very thrilled to spotlight an exceptional program that has been advancing steadily along this scaling pathway, which is the Sugira Muryango program in Rwanda. So Sugira means in Kinyarwanda means strengthen the family. It's essentially a home visit-based parenting program that is designed to reduce family violence and support early childhood development especially among families that are facing extreme poverty and post-conflict adversity. And the program began already in 2014 with a feasibility study, and at the time only involving 20 families. And now, 10 years later, it reaches more than 20,000 families. So if you look here on the diagram at the pathway to scale, the program now sits between stages 3 and 4. So where government integration and system-focused research becomes increasingly important. So today, we will discuss the opportunities and challenges of taking the Sugira Muryango program to the next stage of scaling. So that will be the 4th stage here on the diagram. And we will also discuss the crucial role that research can play in supporting those efforts. So we're very pleased to be joined by my friend and colleague, Professor Theresa Betancourt, who is the Salem Professor in Global Practice at Boston College, and she's also the director of a research program on children and adversity. And we also have Dr. Candace Black, who is a research scientist, also at Boston College. And then in a few minutes, they will jointly share the findings from their research on Sugira Muryango. Welcome, Theresa and Candace, and thank you for joining us. We are also joined by Gilbert Munyemana, who is Deputy Director General of Rwanda's National Child Development Agency, to discuss what the research findings on the Sugira Muryango program, what they mean for early childhood development policy in Rwanda. So welcome, Gilbert, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, babe.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we'll begin now with a short 15-minute presentation from Theresa and Candace about the Sugira Muryango program. And then we will move to our conversation, which really will be the core of this new webinar series. We'd very much like all of you in the audience to be involved. So please use the Q&A tab to submit any questions that you have. And if you have any other thoughts and reflections, you can use the chat tab, but focus the questions on the Q&A tab. We'll try to address as many questions and comments as possible, but we may not be able to address all of them during this 1 hour webinar. However, all questions, comments, feedback, and etc. will be read by the Thrive team, and your input will definitely help to shape future research and events. Also, if you find the chat distracting, which I often do, you can hide it by unchecking the show chat preview in the chat tab and keeping the chat window closed. Also, finally, I'd like to let you know that we are recording this event and that the content will be made available afterwards on our website. And also there you'll find recordings of other events organized before. So now I hand over to Theresa and Candace. Thank you. You've got 15 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bet, and thanks to everyone at Thrive and FCDO for hosting this webinar. We're honored to be here. We're also honored to be a part of the Thrive Implementation Science Initiative with a particular focus on fragile and conflict-affected regions. And today we'll be talking about implementation science strategies for scaling out of home visiting interventions, Sugira Muryango, to promote early childhood development and prevent violence. And we'll be talking about our partnership in Rwanda, and it's so important that we have Gilbert here with us, as this has been a journey together with the government of Rwanda at every step, and we hope to do the same in our partnership under Thrive with Sierra Leone. So let me go to the next slide. So I'm here talking today along with Gilbert and Candace, but I have to acknowledge our team is much bigger than this. This is our headquarters and University of Rwanda team. I want to acknowledge our partnership with Dr. Vincent Sezibera and FXB, which is a Rwandan NGO that handles our oversight, training, implementation, and this warm handover of the program to government over many years now. To work in Rwanda has been an absolute joy. This is a country that is very driven by evidence. It's also a country where children and families are very important and central in the development agenda. Rwanda has about 13.9 million inhabitants, 53% less than 20 years of age. And it's been making huge strides forward in cutting in half infant mortality, maternal mortality, investing in health systems, investing in early learning, investing in social protection. But it has some challenges, including the vestiges of the 1994 genocide, when over the course of 100 days, nearly over 800,000 people were killed. So you have this post-conflict, post-genocide sort of setting. Other challenges have included the HIV and AIDS epidemic, pockets of extreme poverty, and some of the highest rates of stunting in sub-Saharan Africa. Now they're bringing that down, but still very much concerned that this is a blunt indicator of underdevelopment in children. Massive strengths of Rwanda are its political stability, its strong governance, and its work to move out to the district's leadership and incentivize local leadership in making strides forward on development indicators, including early childhood development and violence reduction. They've written ECD policy goals into their economic development strategy, which is very exciting for a government to do that. So we have a long history in Rwanda. It began back in 2006, when first I was working with Partners in Health out in the Rinkwabu region of the country. At that time, we were helping to address some of the family adversity and challenges due to raising children in the context of a different form of adversity, HIV and AIDS. And we took an evidence-based parenting program, adapted it culturally, did lots of qualitative and mixed methods research to get at constructs and measurement in the Rwandan setting. And then after seeing that this did improve family functioning and promote child mental health, we were approached by the World Bank and partners in government to think about making a version of this program that was not specific to HIV and AIDS, but could focus on poverty and focus on families raising a child 0 to 3. And so we had a series, as you heard from Bet, a series of pilots, knowing that some of the evidence-based interventions, like the Reach Up intervention, can be a year or 2 years. We originally had a 25-module intervention working with the Minister of Health at that time. We were told far too long, not scalable, not sustainable. We were able to work with the government of Rwanda to cut the number of modules in half. And every time we made a significant change, we were testing it, including a very large cluster randomized trial of 1,049 families. And more recently, implementation science research, hybrid type 2 studies and hybrid type 3, guided by the EPIS implementation science paradigm. So just to tell you a little bit about the intervention, Sugira Muryango built on that early HIV and AIDS family strengthening intervention. So it maintained all of that problem solving, conflict resolution, focus on the relationship between male and female caregivers and their children. But now to move it to early childhood, we brought in content from the WHO and UNICEF Care for Child Development curricula on early stimulation, nutrition, hygiene, the importance of play. And we've really had a strong focus on male engagement throughout this intervention. And that can be any type of household. Because it's home visiting, you can work with mother, father, auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa, single-headed households. So it makes this very flexible. And we need that for working with the families in the most extreme forms of poverty. And we can work with families still affected by HIV and AIDS, families raising a child with a disability. And we've looked at those outcomes and see broad generalizable effects. At every session, we have a 15-minute play activity where it's coached. So the caregivers are interacting with the child and they're encouraged and seeing the serve and return interactions being pointed out and reinforced for those playful interactions that stimulate early childhood development. So here are the results of our cluster randomized trial. We can't go into a lot of detail, but the papers are here if you want to go ahead and look them up. So pre to post 12 modules takes about 4 months, done by a non-specialist. But in this original trial, we asked Dr. Agnes, can we work with the community health workers? That was our planned pathway to scale. There was too much on their plate already, given what was going on around HIV and AIDS and other health promotion. So we used the same criteria, but recruited non-specialists that we got to choose. We did see pre to post intervention and a significant increase in stimulation, making homemade toys, using materials to engage in playful parenting. We saw also increased care seeking for health problems like diarrhea and fever, increased safe treatment of drinking water. And then at the family level, we saw significant decreases in intimate partner violence and harsh, violent discipline of children. We also saw both for male caregivers and female caregivers improvements in symptoms of anxiety and depression. So we're also seeing a mental health component, so important in post-genocide Rwanda, and increased male engagement in caregiving, so that gender transformative element. A year later, we came back because after just 4 months, you're not expecting a lot in terms of child development. At 1 year post-intervention, we saw significant improvements in child development outcomes, including improved children's motor skills, communication skills, problem-solving skills, and personal social skills. At the family level, we also saw that the violence reduction elements were sustained. So we saw continued lower levels of child harsh discipline, continued lower levels of intimate partner violence, and continued higher male engagement in caregiving. So that was our big trial. We've also recently been able, with Lego Foundation and many others, to come back and look 4 years later. Are we still seeing these families are a favorable environment for promoting early development? And we see, yes, that is the case. We still see families who receive the home visiting have higher level of caregiver stimulation, more learning materials in the home, more language stimulation, more variety of caregiver-child interactions. They're still maintaining those household hygiene practices, and we're still seeing lower levels of violent child discipline and more male engagement in play and stimulation. So this is a recent publication of the 4-year follow-up. But now the big question is, as laid out in the introduction, how do we think about moving to scale? And so we always had our eye on scale from the very beginning. We designed this to be deployment focused, to be scalable and sustainable within the Rwandan system. And we eventually were able to, in working with government, secure an MOU with the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion to work with a new workforce. And this workforce is called the Inshuti Z'umuryango. Rwanda, when they moved children out of institutions into family home-based care, because we know the evidence for that is very important, they established in every village 1 male and 1 female. We'll call them the Izus for short. And they have the mandate of child protection. They're volunteers, but they receive some incentives and training, support. But we saw a real opportunity to bring this evidence-based practice that goes to the homes, that reduces violence, that promotes healthy caregiver-child interactions. And we've actually had a study now of spillover to children born later and to older children. We can talk about that in the discussion. And the idea of the Play Collaborative, as we call it, was an implementation science strategy to engage government at every level of implementation, to foster that warm handoff, and to test this new workforce, the Inshuti Z'umuryango. And our ingredients of our strategy also included a signed charter that every one of the 3 districts, the leadership in those 3 districts signed, saying we commit to quality improvement. And we embedded within that a quasi-experimental study. Dr. Black will be talking about that. And we began to work with USAID before they were dismantled on the idea of a digital dashboard to support delivery. Could we start to use digital tools? Because Rwanda is also making huge investments in technology. So when you're an implementation science research group, the things you want to be looking for are the win-wins. How do you find that platform? What can you latch to think about scale? And what are the motivations of the partners that you're working with? And how can you find the win-win? So we knew that the EZUs, the Child Protection Volunteers, they have a mandate to reduce violence, to engage in gender transformative care. And then we're linking now to the poverty reduction strategy. And those were how we identified the families in the previous trial and how we continue to identify who's eligible. Everyone could benefit from an intervention like this, but we want to link it to those where we see the concentration of underdevelopment of children, very high rates of stunting, high rates of violence, high rates of mental health problems in the families. And those are the families that are eligible for the graduation strategy. And then we come in with Sugira Muryango, which allows this linkage between the issues with families facing a tremendous amount of adversity, the social protection system that's looking to serve them, and then the child protection volunteers who need to learn the skills of parent-child interactions being safe, nonviolent, and promoting flourishing in children facing adversity. So I mentioned the Play Collaborative. A big part of the Play Collaborative were these plan, do, study, act cycles where we address implementation barriers, come up with a plan, try out the plan, and if it works, we share it out. We also have coordination meetings about any implementation barriers that are coming up nationally at quarterly meetings of our National Steering Committee. We have district level meetings twice a month, sector level meetings twice a month of all the stakeholders. CEL, which are groupings of villages, meet weekly. And then we have routine supervision to the home visitors, to the Nshuti Muryango, done by an expert from our SEED team. And that's another important ingredient, that we have people who are very expert in the intervention, who are also good at training others. And they're Rwandan. We've trained them now as a part of our SEED team, and we plan to hand over this package of activities to government. So I'm going to turn it over to Candace now to talk about what we learned in the embedded hybrid type 2. She's just published this paper. Candace, take it away.
Thank you so much. So with the Play Collaborative, in the first phase of this project, we were able to train 2,824 EZUs who delivered Sugira Muryango to 9,503 families. 98% of those families completed the full 12-week program. We also, as part of our engagement with government at every level, trained 7,112 local officials and engaged 16,406 government officials in over 2,800 Play Collaborative meetings at the cell, sector, and district levels. When we asked caregivers, 98.7% of them indicated they were satisfied with the EZU who did the home visits. And we also observed that EZU fidelity and competence, the quality of their delivery of Sugira Muryango improved over the 12 modules with routine supervision. The EZUs themselves also felt that Sugira Muryango had a good fit for the community. It was appropriate. And that it would be useful for families facing challenges and effective for others in the country. EZUs also reported that delivering Sugira Muryango was highly aligned with their scope of work as an EZU. Next slide. When we looked at the effectiveness of Sugira Muryango in the expansion study, we found that from pre to post, children benefited from more access to stimulating materials in the home, such as books and toys provided by their caregivers. We also observed that caregivers were involving children more in their daily activities and providing more stimulating care, which included things like storytelling, reading books, singing, and play. The male caregivers also engaged in more caregiving-related decisions and activities, and children also benefited from increased dietary diversity. At the family level, we saw that caregivers decreased deprivation, harsh discipline that included things like withholding food or toys as a form of discipline, and that male and female caregivers had lower depression and anxiety symptoms at the end of the intervention. Families improve their safety and hygiene practices, including treating their drinking water as well as safer water storage practices. And when we looked, Sugira Muryango was equally beneficial for both male and female children. In that longer time horizon, we've seen that Sugira Muryango children experience improved problem solving and personal social skills. And that caregivers continue to involve children in their daily activities, and that the effect on stimulating care, those stimulating activities like play and reading, actually strengthen over time. So it was even stronger 1 year later than it was immediately following the intervention. At the family level, caregivers continued improvements in household hygiene. What we did not see, which was sort of surprising, was that the intervention did not appear to have the same impact on IPV. However, I think it's really important to consider that this intervention was delivered at the height of the COVID pandemic, which may have impacted our findings. So we know that with the stay-at-home orders, there were elevated risks of IPV and other forms of family violence. There was also possibly some change due to the measures and potentially as well voltage drop. But to respond to that, we've done incredible work to strengthen the gender transformative messaging in Sugira Muryango. Next slide.
Great. Thank you so much, Candace. Yeah, exciting paper. Hope everyone checks it out. So where are we going next? And Gilbert will talk about this. We've really been envisioning a hub and spoke model for spreading this evidence-based practice and working on local leadership, transition, buy-in, understanding, motivation. And so you sort of see our plans here to start with our 3 champion sites where we really do have district mayor champions, and they come out, they know the families, they can really talk about the program and spread it to the neighboring districts. And all of that's going to take financing. And that's where we get to the government relationship and also external donors. We've done a lot of research in Sugira Muryango on cost. And yes, it can be, $199 per family, but look at all the impact. You're talking about the male caregiver, female, the index child, older children, kids born later, other people in the family are learning these skills. We always invite everyone to the table. And just with a very narrow sort of view of costing, if you look at the impact on school readiness, early learning, and violence reduction and health promotion, it's estimated that for every dollar that is spent, you're getting a return of $3.8 to $5. And that's likely underestimated because some of those early costing exercises did not include the mental health benefit. So as we move forward, we're doing broader societal costing and thinking about that a tremendous amount. And our data set is on the Strategic Impact Evaluation Fund website if you're interested in doing additional analyses of the cluster randomized trial that is CEF funded. So World Bank makes those available. We are currently funded by the U.S. National Institutes of Mental Health, given the impact on male and female mental health outcomes, even when it's done by the child protection home visitor. And we've been now looking at a hybrid type 3 implementation effectiveness cluster randomized trial, still guided by the EPIS implementation paradigm, to look at when we have digital tools supporting the expert seed team and using that in the interactions and supervision with the EZU, can we see even greater benefit on the quality of care? So those trajectories of competence and fidelity, also outcomes of timeliness, stabilization of cases where there's violence or mental health issues. And we're also using a social network analysis to examine cross-site learning, communication flow, stakeholder interactions, buy-in across that ecology of the play collaborative. And then really looking at cost again. Can we leverage Government of Rwanda infrastructure and investment in technology to make this a cost-effective and efficient way to deliver this evidence-based program at greater scale? So watch this space in the years ahead. I do want to thank all of our partners in this work, particularly the Government of Rwanda, and I'm so honored that they're here, and also FXB Rwanda and University of Rwanda for their partnership over so many years of work. If you're interested in more of our publications, please scan this QR code, and I think we can turn it back to Bet.
Thank you so much, Theresa and Candace. It's always such a joy listening to you guys. Muryango, thank you, and we'll discuss this more in detail in a bit. If anyone would like to read, and Theresa already put it there, but it's also, you can find also the links to the studies in the chat. Now I would like to invite Gilbert, who's the DDG of Rwanda's National Child Development Agency, to have a conversation with Theresa about what these research findings mean for policy and programming in Rwanda. So Gilbert, before we do that, could you maybe please spend a couple of minutes explaining about your role at the National Child Development Agency, and in particular, the role you have played so far in the design and in the implementation of the Sugira Muryango program?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bet. Thanks, Candace and Therese, for a very good presentation, but also greetings to all our participants in this interesting webinar. As you said, I'm Gilbert. I'm the Deputy Director General of the National Child Development Agency. And the National Child Development Agency, actually, it's a public institution, was created in 2020, actually at a merger of other two institutions, National Children Council, which also have worked with Sugira Muryango before, but also the National ECD program. So I worked there as Deputy Director General, as I said, and our main role is coordinating all interventions or activities related to child development and child protection. And we mainly coordinate all the activities, either governmental interventions, but also partners, but research, to ensure that we are promoting child protection. So coming back to my involvement with Sugira Muryango, I would say that I almost started with it. Even before I come to National Child Development Agency, I was working with Plan International Rwanda, which was a very close collaborator of FXB, the implementer of Sugira Muryango. And I was involved in the beginning on the curriculum, not working on it, but giving more to be in the topic. And then when I was appointed the Deputy Director General, I was very happy again to see Sugira Muryango, but my involvement became bigger, as before it was on the project-based level, but now at the national level, and mainly working with Boston College and the FXB to see how we can scale it up, as we already have the evidence, but also empower our child protection system, which is built on ISO, as it was said. I mean, we have a national coordination, but our child protection is a community-based child protection system where we work with community volunteers who have already had some good merits that Theresa have talked about, but maybe we also come back to those ones. Thank you very much, FC.
Thank you so much, Gilbert. So it's very obvious that you know the Sugira Muryango program very well, which will be very good for this discussion. And we could easily spend hours discussing it, but we only have 20 minutes for this panel discussion. So let's focus on just a couple of topics. So one of the things that I noted down, I think an important aspect is working with Rwanda's nationwide network of these community-based child protection volunteers, so the ISUs. And I was going to ask you, Theresa, but I think you've answered it in your presentation about why you chose to work with ISUs, given that there's also a whole workforce of community health workers in Rwanda, and in most other countries, parenting interventions work with community health workers. But you touched on it already. Do you want to say more about this, or shall I just move on?
Well, no, I think for folks interested in the science of scale, it's really important that from the get-go, you're designing your intervention to be scalable, deployment focused, and you're always thinking about workforce, and you're thinking about the burden on the workforce, but also the structures that support them, and you're thinking about mission alignment. And we early on saw with the hygiene and the health promotion, lots of mission alignment with community health workers in Rwanda, but how is Rwanda making those huge strides and cutting in half maternal mortality, infant mortality? It's because of the investments they've made in the community health workforce on some very critical topics. So we took that memo and feedback from Dr. Agnes Benawaho very seriously and said, okay, let's think again. And it's only through, conversations with government where we could say, what are the other opportunities for scale here? And when the idea of the Sugira Muryango emerged, we could see, oh my goodness, look at the mission alignment here. And they work closely with the community health workers. So because Rwanda has this very strong decentralized focus on health promotion, as well as social protection and child protection, they're all working together. So our home visitors, when they find that the family's not on the Mutuelle, the national health insurance, or maybe the roof material is leaking, there's problems with health promotion or housing insecurity, they can work very closely with those other community health workers and others at the village level to problem solve. And we keep track of all these themes, and that's what our Play Collaborative data, we've got so much qualitative data of the themes that came up in all of those implementation PDSA cycles. So I think the coordination between the two workforces is important. And as you know, in Sierra Leone with Thrive, we're hoping to adapt this intervention because it comes out of a violence and post-conflict, conflict-affected sort of focus. But Sierra Leone's infrastructure has been much more undermined. They had an 11-year civil war. So the health system in Sierra Leone is extremely damaged. We did an early pilot with the community health workers there, and Sierra Leone has a lot more infrastructure challenges. And we found that it probably wasn't a feasible pathway to scale because they were constantly being pulled out for trainings and other emergencies, MPOX. So you have to think about that workforce sort of issue early on. And when you see you need to iterate, this is when you come back to your implementation science in EPIS, which is exploration, preparation, implementation, sustainment. And it has a lot of sophisticated measures and modeling at each of those phases, plus cross-cutting themes and innovation in how you map your intervention ecology. You come back to exploration, right? That's not going to work. They're getting pulled out. There's too much on their plate. What else is there? So that studying of the implementation ecology, knowing strengths and weaknesses, mapping it all out, doing it in partnership with the stakeholders, especially government, is critical.
Yeah, thank you, Theresa. And you mentioned one of the reasons of using the ISOs is, for scale and sustainability. And indeed, from the evidence you presented earlier, it shows that these ISOs are able to implement the intervention with a fairly high fidelity at large scale, and that many of the positive effects on caregiving practices that you have observed in the smaller trials, that they were actually maintained, which demonstrates the huge potential for ISOs to deliver these services effectively at scale. So then, Gilbert, I would like to come to you in response to that. So given this evidence about these ISOs actually effectively delivering these services at scale, to what extent has this already, if at all, started to influence the internal discussions you're having in your agency about potentially changing policy frameworks or adapting curricula, or just generally investments into this ISO workforce, if at all? You're on mute. Yes, you're on mute,
Yes,
Gilbert.
I was muted. Thank you very much for the question, but also for the explanation that Theresa gave. Maybe before also I come to how it is influencing our policy, just a small addition on what Theresa said, because the community health workers have been delivering and then good evidence. But at some point in Rwanda also, we saw that they were becoming overloaded, if I could say, with many things. But also learning from them, we saw that community-based programs, volunteers working well, and then the Government of Rwanda created the ISO mainly before they were having another mission, which Theresa touched a little bit on the reintegration, because after 1994 genocide against Tutsi, we had a lot of orphanages. And anchoring to our culture that a child belongs to the community, but also the championship from our highest level offices and the leadership, the ISO have managed really to help all the children to be integrated in the families. So building on that, they have been also recognized and strengthened. And we really think, and we think it's a best choice for Sugira Muryango to choose them, because already they have demonstrated their capacity, but also the trust they have in the community. Because we've, when they were erected, Theresa said it's a male and a female, but who have been exemplary in their community. So they have that respect, and what they're saying can easily be understood. So Coming back to how it is influencing our discussion on policy level, first, I would say that lastly, when I was in one of the presentation of evidence, how ISU in some districts are really delivering also the ECD, early childhood development components, because in Rwanda we have this different pillars on nutrition, hygiene, but early learning, building on the nurturing care framework. We really saw that it is possible that they have accomplished the first mission. Could we take them to this also another bigger mission? So now the ISUs are going not to be only focusing on the child protection in other districts, because in the districts where Sugira Muryango is being implemented, we already have evidence that they are doing the good job. So first, the mission of the ISU is changing, or it's upgrading. But also they are going to be working with others as a community health workers, they said, but also they work with other two major volunteers, which are parasocial workers working on the graduation out of poverty, but also farmer promoters on the nutrition side. So the first thing is that, yes, the practice in the Sugira Muryango is going to be scaled up everywhere else. Another thing that actually we recently were discussing, but from the technical discussion with our team, FXB, it's how the visitation, home visitation is going to be done. It's going to be revamped, if I could say, focusing on the curriculum. We have the curriculum that Sugira Muryango have been using. We are going to be, actually our team are integrating them with also other materials that we have, and we are going to have a unique way of delivering the home visits. And another thing, maybe the last one on the policy level that is in discussion, we are revising our integrated child rights policy. And in the new one, the ISU workforce, actually child protection, community-based workforce, is going to be the bigger player in that. So I would say all those evidences have been helpful, but also they have been influencing the way we do things. And just to finish this intervention, I remember whenever I used to work also with Prayer International, we used to have a last slides of saying government is going to scale up. It's not actually a magic, but it's something that has to be systematic. Probably we continue to discuss on this later, but we are happy that we are scaling that up with FXB and the Boston College. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. It sounds like this study is a great example of how evidence can actually influence policy and guidelines, which doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So yeah, we could talk about this more, as you said, Gilbert, but there's another topic that I've noted down that I would like to talk about, and it's maybe a bit more challenging topic. It's about financing. So Sugira Muryango so far has relied mainly on generous external funding. And the study, as Theresa mentioned, it estimates that once integrated into government systems, the program would cost roughly $200 per family, which I think is a meaningful investment for a country with limited resources and many competing priorities. But at the same time, Theresa also mentioned that every dollar invested could yield $4 to $5 in future income earnings for participating children, perhaps making the economic case for investing into the program a bit quite compelling. So Gilbert, I have a set of questions for you in this regards, and you can just pick the ones you feel most comfortable to answer on air. So can a national ECD program delivered through ISUs realistically continue to depend on external resources, or will the government need to assume perhaps a larger role over time? And then related to this, how do the estimated $200 per family compare to Rwanda's current ECD budget envelope? And then finally, does the study's projected return on investment strengthen your case for scaling up public financing for ECD, or would you need additional evidence to advocate for any increase in domestic resources allocated to early childhood development? These are a lot of questions, so you just pick whatever you feel comfortable with, and then Theresa can get back.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I believe that we'll be continuing this discussion. But the key things is that, first of all, the scale up of the program, while Sugira Muryango have been depending, or being funded by external fundings, But the good thing with the project is that also it have been built on the existing systems, because ISU, even though they are not, all the ISU are not implementing Sugira Muryango, but it's an existing platform. So that one, it's already a good starting point, which actually sometimes it becomes a problem with other projects on the scale up, while you have to build another platform, another system. So Sugira Muryango is based on the existing platform, because we already have Sugira Muryango all over the country, but we have also ISU who are implementing Sugira Muryango. And on the financing, yes, the Sugira Muryango have been counting it in the terms of households, but also knowing that the program built on the existing system, the government of Rwanda have been putting more emphasis on the strengthening the system, the whole child protection workforce. Like, for example, we said, and we're going to build on the investments which have been done in other districts. Like, for example, if we have spent a lot of money in developing the curriculum and everything, what we are doing now in the scale up, we are not going to redevelop it again in other districts. So that one, it's going to be done, on the lower cost. And the second thing is that, of course, we're not going to select other volunteers. Probably we are going to upgrade them with what we have seen on the field. Like recently, we had a communication from FXB that there are some ISU that we have been having some good ISU, or who are respected in the family, but their level of education may not be enough. They may not be knowledgeable with technology. So we're looking at that one. On the human source, that will be also done in that way. But the investment of Government of Rwanda, looking at the evidence we have on the Sugira Muryango, we have also done the ECD investment case with UNICEF. We are doing actually more investment cases, but already what we have is enough to implement and to invest more. So the investment of Government of Rwanda will be more on investing on the system, but also will be building on the gains of some of the projects. So I would say that we will leverage on the investment done area. It may be less than the 200 per households if we scale it up together. And again, if we use technology. There was maybe something that we need to build more evidence on. It's also the use of technology in delivering either mass education, in monitoring and evaluation, in case management and peer learning. So those are the things that we are investing in, and we believe that it will reach all the households, but also the cost actually, when we do it in the community-based way, it may be cheaper, but considering the investments, I think Rwanda will be able to afford it because it's not an expenditure actually. It is an investment in our human capital development, which is a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Theresa, would you want to briefly come back to this comment on what Gilbert just said before we turn to the question and answers from the audience?
No, I think you see from Gilbert sort of the visionary thinking that you see everywhere in the Rwandan government. They are very evidence-driven. They are innovators. They are very serious about promoting human capital and moving forward to be a middle-income country in the years ahead as a goal, and to reduce poverty, reduce violence, promote early learning, promote educational attainment, move families out of poverty. And because, again, this is really focused on the most vulnerable, right? So it's about lifting up all families to their full potential. And I think another important part of what we learn in the return on investment, and this is why in the years ahead, really looking at those broader ways of thinking about the impacts this intervention is having, is it's also helping the district mayors meet what are called Imihigo goals. And maybe, Gilbert, you might want to mention a little bit more about those. but because he's the expert, not me. But they do have sort of incentives as districts to perform. And so if certain districts are really bringing down the rates of uninsured families, or bringing down rates of violence, or even mental health outcomes, suicides, you see that some of these Imihigo goals are written into the incentive structure, and we're helping them meet them. I think some of our analyses would show that the Sugira Muryango, because it's home visiting, because we go there, we see the sleeping conditions, the hygiene promotion, the toileting, the feeding, the interactions, the safety, the toys, the stimulation. We are helping them do something that's already in their agenda for development and prosperity. So again, it's that finding that win-win, and I think that's why the investment in home visiting is so powerful too.
Thank you, Theresa. And I know we could talk more about this, and Gilbert, that you have a lot of responses to this as well, but I do want to give an opportunity for people in the audience to get a response to their questions. So they've been putting a lot of questions in the Q&A box, which some of them have already been responded to. So I'm just going to focus on those that have not been discussed. So first question is for you, Theresa and Candace, and then I also have one for Gilbert after that. So the question is, could you share your experience of implementing this program involving multiple stakeholders, particularly the coordination challenges you encountered and how you mitigated them? And also, how did you ensure buy-in for this program from this diverse group of stakeholders?
Yeah, no, it's a really important question. The first take-home message is be intentional and map the implementation ecology. And this is where, going back to implementation science, it is a rigorous discipline. There are books, journals, frameworks, use them. They come out of healthcare quality improvement. So we use EPIS, we mapped that out to look at what is happening within Rwanda where there are opportunities and where do we have potential barriers. And in our exploration phase, we also looked at how can we ensure coordination and a sort of coordinated all of the stakeholders, including all of government, approaches to overcoming implementation barriers. So you'll remember that slide that I had that shows where we did the play collaborative meetings at the national level, the sector, the district, and the cell, as well as the supervision happening to the Sugira Muryango. That was very intentional. That wasn't just, something that came together, magically. That was a lot of work. And to think about, people taking it seriously and coming. But look at what Rwandan government officials did. They showed up. They came routinely. They helped problem solve. They were motivated. And there's almost a way, district by district, there's this excitement about, reaching these Imihigo goals, performing. And when we go out with our mayors, and we've had family testimonials with the mayor visiting, these are the powerful stories where they talk about the transformation they've seen in their district. So those are our best champions. But that was all, that coordination was built very intentionally.
Thank you, Theresa. Gilbert, would you like to come back to this as well, or shall I ask you the question that was addressed to you in the chat box? You're on mute. Sorry, we don't hear you, Gilbert.
Yes, I was saying Theresa said it well. Maybe the next question, because I saw there's some which...
Yes.
Yeah.
One question for you, Gilbert. What do you consider are the next phases of scale up if you get the finance? So more quality and functions or more districts? It's a question for you.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, they both go together because we look at the access, but also the quality. Because the scale in other districts, it's more having more components what the Sugira Muryango was doing. But the quality is important because we saw in the evidence that it's like, for example, if we have seen very good practice in terms of mass education, and instead of maybe having the training in each district, we may be having this blended learning where we can have the whole country maybe with the same money. I mean, it's not actually only access and quality, but also efficiency, because the scale will look at both. Because maybe what I can add on what Theresa said on the immediate performance contract. So performance contracts, we have mapped all different families with conflicts and so on. So whenever we have the districts working together to reduce the number, we can see already the outcomes are there, the access is there, but also the efficiency in doing that, it's going to be very important. So I would say all both have to go hand in hand, of course, but access comes first, quality coming, and efficiency. It's also very important when you are a raw resource country, as Rwanda, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Then there is a question for you, Candace, which is about the paper that you've just published. So the question is, what are the data elements captured for ECD? And I think this is about the hybrid type 2 study that you've just presented.
Yeah, in terms of the measures that we use to assess the early child development, we were using the Ages and Stages questionnaire in this particular case, which is a caregiver-reported child development measure. And we are looking for ways to move to sort of more direct assessment because that is generally considered sort of the gold standard. There's, exciting developments in that area, including things like the global scales for early development that we hope to sort of adapt and use in our country programs like for Rwanda. And also there are other measures that we're exploring, if we were to, say, expand Sugira Muryango to older children older than 3, the IDELA is a great measure too to look at. It's just for that older age group. So, but yeah, so we use the ages and stages in this case.
And those are the standard subdomains, right? So it's cognition, social emotional development, language.
Yep.
All right, thank you so much, Candace. Then a question for you, Gilbert. What are the interactions between this program, so the Sugira Muryango, and the ECD tools rolled out by the Government of Rwanda through the Ministry of Health? That is, which include the parenting-based baby Ubuntu methodology piloted by Partners in Health. So how does that interact with how do these two programs interact? And if Gilbert, if you want to delegate the question to someone else, then you can do that.
Yes, Ivana, thank you very much. Actually, maybe also with that question, I'll answer another question I saw on the chat box where someone was asking how do we put child protection together with ECD. Actually, that's why also the government of Rwanda took a decision to merge 2 institutions. We used to have a National Children Council, which was looking more on child protection, a national ECD program. But looking that we need to have a holistic approach towards children, not someone taking this part and another part, NCDA was created. And then what we do mainly is also to make sure that we are linking all the services together. So starting with the question from the colleague from Tanzania, actually child protection is part of the child development. But whenever we have, it's not part of the ECD, because ECD we go up to 6 years, but child protection can go beyond that. But we ensure that we have this comprehensive programming also in the policies, making sure that we see the child in the holistic way. So child protection is part of the department of NCD, the same that we are having also ECD and nutrition working there. And that's what we have been working with also our staff, but our partners to understand it. So coming back to how we work with other projects in the Ministry of Health, and we have also many projects. So at our sector, we have identified different, what I could say, flagship projects, which includes actually we have Sugira Muryango, we have the Rwamrek Bandebereho, which is a more positive male engagement. We have other different. So whenever there is another project, like for example, the Bandebereho is a project which started the implementation with Ministry of Health, but also our sector, Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion, has classified it as a model ECD which have enough evidence for being scaled up. And the other intervention which comes in that area, the same as Sugira Muryango or positive, male engagement, will be aligned with those projects. So personally, I'll be happy to learn more on the project also with partners in health and see either it could be linked with the project also we have as enough evidence, or if it is an innovative other way, it is something that we can create evidence together and become also part of the fraction. But necessarily there will be a linkage with other existing projects. So probably the colleague and we have a discussion later to learn more about this project and how it could be linked to those others, or if we need to build more evidence to ensure that also it comes as a new model to follow up. Thank you.